Sidwell might be the most efficient villain this show has ever seen, and that says more about everyone else than it does about him. Ah, the look on Drew's face when Laura was re-elected mayor. One could almost hear the sound of his ego crumpling like yesterday's campaign flyers. He stood there slack-jawed as Jordan offered congratulations, silently recalculating whatever ill-conceived schemes he'd been harboring. It's hard not to savor that moment of quiet defeat. Priceless doesn't quite cover it. But let's not dwell too long on Drew's misery. There's far too much chaos to unpack. For starters, there's Dalton. The man was so drunk, it's a logistical miracle he managed to make it from the bar to the docks, and then onto the island. Was it divine intervention? A blackout ferry service? Or did he simply stumble into a wormhole of poor continuity? Either way, Sidwell's security must have been taking a collective nap, because not one soul managed to stop a staggering drunk from approaching the estate like a bull in a bourbon-soaked china shop. And speaking of Sidwell, what a gem. He didn't just shoot Dalton, he executed him with the casual flair of someone ordering lunch. No fuss, no attempt at subtlety, just bang bang, and a corpse at Britt's feet. Her reaction? Genuine shock, bless her, though it's unclear what part she found surprising. Sidwell's been telegraphing his villain credentials for weeks. If anything, it was refreshing to see a bad guy finally stop monologuing and get to the point. Meanwhile, Drew had the gall to suggest Laura was no better than him. Because clearly, winning an election through public service is morally equivalent to whatever it is Drew's been doing with. Is this amnesia, loyalty, or just plot-convenient inertia? Over in the misguided plans unraveling department, Sidwell is on a losing streak worthy of its own montage. First, the failed mansion buyout, then, the fruitless effort to oust Laura and install Ezra, and now, a sloppy murder committed in front of a witness. Up next, his inevitable crash and burn attempt to frame Michael and somehow extricate Willow from prison. Sidwell's villainy has all the finesse of a man trying to play chess with oven mitts. Meanwhile, Joss was on the brink of actually extracting useful information from Dalton before Gio's perfectly timed interruption. Another 20 minutes, and she might have uncovered the location of the other lab, where no one would hear them bark, as Dalton so cryptically put it. Yes, he was apparently still testing on animals, just not where the children could. A stampede of liberated lab animals across the stage would have been the most honest part of the campaign season. As for Dalton's final destination, woods or water, it hardly matters. What does is the sheer absurdity of how it went down. Casual murder, no cleanup, no consequences, yet. It's the kind of soap opera villainy that makes one almost root for the bad guy, almost. And while we're speculating, let's not ignore the theory that Drew was shot by a woman, because of course he was. After all, Michael or Curtis would have had the courtesy to shoot him face to face. And with Sonny having offhandedly mentioned that Drew's disappearance could conveniently clear up the case against the kids, one can practically hear the gears turning in the writer's room. Finally, with Dalton out of the picture, does that mean Rocco walks free? No claimant, no case. Simple math, really. But the real takeaway? Laura won. Drew lost. A shame. It's been far too long since someone took a dramatic dive at Windermere. Never trust a Port Charles resident with a secret. They can't even hide a body properly. Ah, Port Charles, where every whisper echoes like a gunshot, and no scandal stays buried for long. Except the bodies, but we'll get to that. Let's begin with Nina, the town's self-appointed messenger pigeon. Forever flapping her mouth, she can't decide if she wants to play whistleblower, diversion artist, or just professional hypocrite. Today she's tattling on Portia, tomorrow it's Michael. Her strategy? Stir the pot just enough to keep the scrutiny off her and her ever-innocent daughter. Unsurprisingly, it backfires. Every time. Then there's Chase. Bless his oblivious heart, someone hand him a mirror and a badge labeled Drew 2.0. Speaking of crime scenes, let's talk about Laura. Imagine opening your trunk and finding Dalton dead inside. No note, no warning, just murder on wheels. The culprit? Well, either Sidwell or Britt, take your pick. Although Britt's track record for drama practically screams guilty, Sidwell's body count is stacking up faster than the writer's plot holes. And yes, Sidwell is the gift that keeps on gaslighting. He's scheming, sinister, and now supposedly planning to pin Dalton's murder on Sunny. Because why not? Framing people is practically a love language in this town. There's also the Panther theory. Because when you're out of logic, bring in the jungle cat. And naturally, someone had to drag Jerry Jacks into the mess. When in doubt, blame a ghost from the WSB archives. Britt, meanwhile, continues her character is a confusing cocktail of bitterness, twists, and bad decisions. One can only hope the writers eventually give her some coherent direction, or at least a vacation from her own dysfunction. Elsewhere, Ned has apparently vanished into the General Hospital void. No visitors, no updates, just the echo of what used to be a storyline. Let's not ignore the burgeoning romance between Michael and Jacinda. Yes, the chemistry is questionable at best, but that hasn't stopped the rumor mill from predicting a wedding. Not for love, of course, merely to avoid a courtroom cameo, because nothing says romance like legal immunity. And Willow. The passive-aggressive pangs of jealousy are showing. Michael and Wiley bonding with Jacinda didn't go unnoticed. Cue the subtle side-eyes and barely veiled Drew, conveniently present for her victory, still basking in the illusion of relevance, but with great power comes, well, probably blackmail and scandal. Give it time. Finally, Carly. She's walking a tightrope over shark-infested waters with JB, the ever-suspicious WSB agent who's about as gullible as a lie detector test. She's pretending to love Jack, but it's about as convincing as a middle school play. JB knows. Everyone knows. And now that Carly knows she's being watched, the act is already unraveling. Her feelings are too strong, her performance too wooden, and JB? He's already seen the script. Let the games begin. In short, Port Charles remains the perfect blend of melodrama, incompetence, and accidental comedy. And frankly, we wouldn't have it any other way. Emma solved more in 5 minutes than the dubs. Apparently, General Hospital has fully embraced the spy thriller meets bad science fiction formula, complete with Aussie-accented villains, animal experimentation, and secret government operations so incompetent, a teenager could crack them. Let's start with Outback, an alleged lab escapee. No, not the restaurant mascot, sadly, who seems to be walking around freely, dropping breadcrumbs like a rogue Scooby-Doo character. He all but handed Joss the location of the mystery lab. Naturally, she ignored the obvious lead instead of, say, telling someone competent. Not that there's much competition. Professor Dalton, whose accent conveniently thickens with alcohol consumption, has managed to bungle villainy with impressive flair. His secret lab work? Exposed? His animal testing? Admitted, just off campus. The man is essentially Vaughn, their representative, dramatically swoops in to arrest Dalton, after Emma waltzes into the bar and casually outs herself as the one who broke into his lab. Because subtlety is dead. Joss, in typical undercover agent fashion, lies badly about knowing Vaughn's WSB affiliation. Emma, of course, instantly clocks it. At this point, the kids are running circles around the so-called professionals. Then there's the chaos that is Sidwell, a man who oscillates between accidental comic relief and chaotic executioner. In one breath, he shoots Dalton, because why not? In the next, he's trading barbs with Britt about bomb-laced ankles and deathbed awakenings in a field of poppies, like a deranged mashup of The Wizard of Oz and Mission Impossible. But don't worry, in a rare moment of clarity, Drew calls out Laura for her own selective blindness, pointing out that she's no better than him. When characters start self-diagnosing their moral decay, you know the writing's trying to be clever. Whether it lands is another matter entirely. Finally, the biggest twist. Laura wins the mayoral race, which says more about the electoral standards in Port Charles than it does about her leadership. But sure, let's all act shocked. Between assassination attempts, animal cruelty, WSB ineptitude, and children doing federal-grade detective work, General Hospital continues to prove that, in Port Charles, logic and law enforcement are permanently out to lunch. General Hospital just crowned a better villain than Sunny, and it's not who you think. Well, General Hospital has finally outdone itself. Who knew Sidwell, a character who Yes, Sidwell shot Henry Dalton. Shot him. No hesitation, no subtlety, no back-alley cover-up. Just cold, calculated violence, and with a witness present, no less. Sunny and Jason should be taking notes. Compared to Sidwell, their brand of criminal honor is practically quaint. Naturally, Dalton is now out of the picture, though the how of his discovery remains ripe for melodrama. Will he wash up dramatically near the docks? Or perhaps he'll be found slumped behind Mayor Laura's office, just to keep things poetically messy. Regardless, Laura, who only had the audacity to slap Dalton, is somehow a suspect. Because in Port Charles, corporal punishment now counts as motive for murder. Meanwhile, Britt, a so-called brilliant doctor, remains bafflingly helpless. Apparently, the woman who holds a key to Dalton's lab and has access to a pharmacy's worth of chemicals can't her continued servitude to Sidwell is less a plotline and more a glaring indictment of the writer's understanding of science, or at least common sense. If she finally breaks down and confesses to Jason what Sidwell did, it'll be less catharsis and more overdue damage control. Elsewhere, Drew continues to make enemies with the tireless enthusiasm of a politician on a mission, or rather, a congressman with a suspiciously open calendar. Is there any resident he hasn't antagonized this week? And let's not ignore the limp. Either Drew has a bone made of glass, or someone on set has a fetish for canes, because we are now firmly in milking it territory. On the subject of Drew, his smug certainty about Laura's defeat in the mayoral race. Meanwhile, the Lucas-Marco-Carly triangle has all the nuance of a blunt object. Lucas, bless his heart, is still in the dark, while Carly, rare voice of reason, remains vindicated. Emma, on the other hand, seems to have discarded her mission entirely. In favor of unleashing raw fury on Dalton, it was, frankly, the most cathartic moment of the week. Jason, Nathan, and Lulu are now aware Britt has the lab key, which may eventually lead to some long-overdue revelations. That is, if Britt can stop wringing her hands long enough to do something useful. And then there's Marco, clearly auditioning to be the show's second-string sociopath, who's sliding comfortably into the villainous slot Sidwell carved open. A few scattered thoughts deserve their own call-outs. GH would do well to remember that Danny and Charlotte are cousins, before the writers drift into uncomfortable territory. And if Caroline Hennessy's temporary absence is a backdoor setup for more Rick and Alexis legal banter, then at least one subplot is trending in the right direction. Let's not forget Michael and Willow. Once, his passivity was frustrating. Now, post-Drew-induced brainwashing, it's exhausting. Perhaps Jacinda is due for a comeback, if only to salvage what little interest remains in this romantic wreckage. Finally, a lingering question. What exactly was Faison working on that Sidwell is so desperate to continue? Whatever it is, it's probably evil, convoluted, and barely tethered to reality, just like the show itself. In the end, Sidwell is winning. Not just in-universe, but on-screen. His lines, gestures, and expressions have injected a dark charisma into a show that often forgets how fun a proper villain can be. The audience may root for his downfall, but General Hospital doesn't have villains anymore, just adults who act worse than the children. Apparently, Dante has decided that the most effective parenting strategy is to weaponize blame, specifically, directing it at Gio with military precision. Every minor inconvenience, every teenage misstep, all lands squarely on Gio's shoulders. The boy could sneeze, and Dante would probably accuse him of orchestrating a biohazard. Instead of, say, acting like a father, Dante plays the role of hard-nosed disciplinarian with no room for empathy, just what every emotionally neglected kid dreams of. Meanwhile, Rocco, poor thing, is spiraling into full-blown invisibility. Unlike Danny or Gio, he lacks the fire to stand up for himself. Yet, ironically, he may be one of the strongest performers in the cast. Let's hope the writers recognize that before they side. As for Gio, He's shaping up to be the rare moral compass in a town that eats decency for breakfast. The tragedy? He's doing it without the family support every Quartermain kid seems to take for granted. With Lois gone and Dante emotionally AWOL, Gio has to navigate betrayal, blame, and teenage drama without so much as a parental safety net. It's not just unfair, it's criminally negligent in the soap world. Rumors swirl that Danny's actor might be on the way out. If true, that's a blow. Because at least Danny, for all his Cassadine lineage, shows loyalty, which is more than can be said for half the adults in Port Charles, who are too busy gaslighting children or weaponizing pharmaceuticals to notice their own failings. Speaking of children forced to act like adults, enter Charlotte, who has now taken on the role of child antagonist with unnerving ease. She practically dragged the boys into that canceled lab operation, then tried to choreograph a cover-up worthy of a scandal episode. She's not just bending the truth, she's rewriting it in her own image. Yet no one seems too concerned that she's being groomed for a future as Helena Cassadine's spiritual successor. Then there's the Drew debacle. The man has gone from bland hero to corporate tyrant in record time, insulting Laura, of all people, by suggesting she's as corrupt as he is. It's the kind of narcissistic meltdown that should come with a prescription. Now that his pet politician, Boyle, lost to Laura in the mayoral race, he's flailing, furious, and, finally, facing the consequences of being a self-righteous opportunist. Frankly, it's overdue. And his storyline is straight out of a dystopian thriller, threatening Britt's life-saving medicine, warning her that Jason can't protect her, all while dangling a second secret lab that allegedly experiments on animals. It's the kind of exaggerated villainy that used to belong to Bond films, but now finds a comfortable home in the GH plotline, like it pays rent. Meanwhile, Jason's loyalties are now split between keeping Danny safe and protecting Britt, and one can only imagine how thrilled he'll be to discover she's aligned with Sidwell, the human embodiment of a pharmaceutical threat level. Despite all this chaos, there's a glimmer of hope. The kids, Danny, Charlotte, Emma, even if they're currently being manipulated or making poor choices, are showing more courage and loyalty than most of their elders. Charlotte and Danny are even being allowed to confess to the lab break-in, which is more accountability than half the adults have shown this year. So what does the future hold? Perhaps more children cleaning up their parents' messes. Perhaps more dead characters springing back to life as if the afterlife is just another Port Charles zip code. Or perhaps GH will finally be tested in the ratings, with CBS's Beyond the Gates threatening to siphon off the few viewers left who haven't yet rage quit. One thing's certain, as long as Dante keeps using Gio as his scapegoat, Drew continues his descent into power-mad oblivion, and Charlotte becomes the next Cassadine villain in training. General Hospital will remain what it's always been, a masterclass in moral failure masquerading as daytime drama. Everyone keeps calling him a genius. Here's why Dalton is actually the dumbest man in the room. In the latest chapter of Melodrama Meets Mad Science, Dalton, also known in less charitable circles as Professor Gaslight, finally implodes under the weight of his own sleaze. The fallout? A cocktail-soaked humiliation, a WSB sting operation, and the collective relief of everyone who's endured one too many scenes of his bourbon-scented monologues. Let's begin at the source of the disaster, the brown dog, where Dalton, drenched in self-pity and whiskey, decides to perform his usual one-man tragedy for anyone who will listen. His lab has been breached, again, his schemes exposed, and, horror of horrors, Grandma Mare is no longer extending her political get-out-of-jail-free card. Naturally, he's still making it all about himself. Enter Joss, who arrives not as a damsel, but as a femme fatale with a mission. No longer his student, and armed with a killer stare and a flirty thigh touch, she plays Dalton like a fiddle in flames. He thinks he's seducing her. In reality, she's baiting a trap. Gio and Emma arrive to complete the tableau, watching in horror, and possibly mild amusement, as Dalton tries to coax Joss back to his lab, a space with the ambiance of a basement crime scene. Gio, never one to suffer fools, intervenes with just enough smugness to puncture Dalton's fantasy. Then comes the real showstopper. Emma, breaker of labs and illusions, casually admits to sabotaging Dalton's operation, not once, but twice. Her delivery is flawless, her cocktail toss even better. Dalton short-circuits, delivering a frantic villain monologue that no one asked for. And then, the grand reveal. Vaughn whips off the hoodie, flashes a WSB badge, and exposes the full extent of the trap. Back at Windermere, Britt is officially out of patience, with Dalton, with Sidwell, and with whatever half-baked, morally bankrupt plan they thought she'd ever buy into. Sidwell, a discount Bond villain with good grooming habits and vague threats, tries to pull the "I saved your life, now do crimes for me" routine. Britt replies with all the enthusiasm of someone being offered expired yogurt. Then Dalton stumbles in, ranting about the WSA like a man who just remembered his browser history is discoverable. Sidwell looks on, horrified, and not at the legal exposure, but at the sheer mediocrity of the man he once funded. Joss. Tactical flirtation meets moral clarity. She seduced a villain into oblivion. Give her a badge and a throne. Vaughn. From lurking cryptid to undercover WSB royalty. The badge reveal was cinema. Emma. Breaks into labs, deserves a medal and his own subplot. Dalton. A PhD in manipulation, a master's in self-pity, and a minor in public humiliation. May he rest in irrelevance. Dalton didn't just lose his illegal lab. He lost his credibility, his dignity, and what little social capital he had left. There's no lab, no leverage, and certainly no redemption arc waiting in the wings. Vaughn should be prepping a holding cell. Britt deserves popcorn and peace. And as for Dalton, let's just hope he's smart enough to stay off LinkedIn. Emotional regulation isn't exactly his strong suit. Laura just buried Drew Kane without even touching him. And honestly, he deserved every syllable of it. Just when one begins to suspect that Port Charles has finally run out of energy, or budget, for high-stakes drama, the writers pull off a finale so delightful. Let's dissect the carnage. Drew Kane, affectionately dubbed Drufus, for reasons his smirk alone explains, sauntered into the election expecting to cruise into office on a wave of entitlement and manufactured scandal. Instead, he was publicly obliterated by none other than Laura Collins, who claimed 4 more years with all the subtlety of a guillotine drop. Jordan's entrance, brandishing the election results like a soap opera death warrant, was the moment. Drew's reaction? A silent implosion so profound it could have qualified as performance art. Laura, with surgical precision, cut him down. We're not the same. And indeed, they are not. She governs. He schemes in beige suits and calls it leadership. Let the record show, Drufus is not, and has never been, him. Over at Port Charles' most dramatic dive bar, Jocelyn, the unchallenged Joss, was vindicated. Science and criminal liability both had a big night. Enter Vaughn, mysterious, disapproving, lip-locking. 1 minute he's growling about the mission, the next he's planting a kiss like he's auditioning for Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Soap Edition. A spin-off practically writes itself. Agent Vaughn and the Duchess, Port Charles Confidential. Meanwhile, in the interrogation room, the junior division of the Cassadine dynasty unveiled its true power. Perjury wrapped in dimples, Danny and Charlotte, the adorable harbingers of chaos, casually admitted to stealing Britt's key fob. The room froze. Jason blinked like he'd just discovered his child is, in fact, a Cassadine. Charlotte, ever the prodigy of misdirection, proposed a legally dubious plan. Blame Dalton for hitting Rocco. She turned on the waterworks, trembling lips and all, while Danny, wise beyond his hoodie, upstairs, a council of worried adults. Dante, Lulu, Rick, Sonny, debated the ethics of letting children lie on the stand. Rick floated the idea of provoking Dalton into a breakdown. Not a difficult feat, just mention a surveillance mic and he self-immolates. Meanwhile, Charlotte continued perfecting her role as Port Charles's youngest master manipulator. One gets the feeling this isn't her final act. Back at the murder annex, also known as Dalton's lab, Britt finally unleashed the monologue we've all been waiting for. She read Dalton down to the molecular level. Drunk, sloppy, cruel, mediocre. He didn't take it well, and then, miracle of miracles, Sidwell pulled a gun. A shot rang out. Dalton collapsed. The scientific menace was finally out of commission. Slithering into Laura's office like a failed Shakespeare villain, he inquired smugly whether she was preparing a concession speech. Spoiler, she was not. Jordan, present for moral support, and perhaps to prevent a homicide, was visibly disgusted. Drew dismissed her and attempted to pitch Ezra, the Sidwell puppet with ethics bought in bulk, as Laura's successor. His logic? Everyone uses power for personal gain. A bold statement from a man who spent the entire election cycle reenacting House of Cards in business casual. Laura shut him down with the elegance of a woman who's seen 20 years of corruption and still came out cleaner than anyone in that office. I work for Port Charles. You work for revenge fanfic. The Drufus lost the election, the plot, and the last shred of public dignity. Currently starring in How to Be an Antagonist Without Even Trying. Charlotte delivered an Emmy-worthy performance, proving that the real Cassadine heir isn't in a boardroom. She's in a police station, weaponizing her tear ducts. Danny. The chaos twin we didn't know we needed. Zero chill. Maximum entertainment. Laura. Unshaken, unbothered, unmatched. Long may she reign. Will Danny and Charlotte save Rocco? Probably, assuming they aren't arrested for courtroom dramatics first. Will Britt and Vaughn spark a romantic espionage franchise? Hopefully. Will Drufus ever stop monologuing like a disappointed substitute teacher? Doubtful. But one thing is certain. Port Charles remembered how to end an episode. Port Charles has never been a bastion of logic, but lately, the narrative threads are unraveling faster than a cheap soap opera wig in a wind tunnel. Let's begin with the town's reigning queen, Mayor Laura Collins, who, surprise, has been re-elected. This one moment he's telling D.A. Turner he destroyed the lab while dragging poor Rocco around. The next, he's assuring Laura that everything was pristine. Meanwhile, lab reports contradict both. And yet, Charlotte and Danny may have been inside the lab after Dalton left, conveniently positioning them as the culprits of said destruction. If Dalton lied and the kids were there after him, then the entire frame job falls apart faster than Dalton's pulse. And where is Britt in all this? A woman with advanced medical and chemical expertise, somehow held hostage by whatever convoluted mess Sidwell has cooked up. Is she being blackmailed with threats, debts, or just sheer bad writing? Either way, the fact that she hasn't simply recreated her medication to gain autonomy from Sidwell is as baffling as it is insulting to her intelligence. Then there's the ever-expanding Quartermain gun subplot. Let's review. Edward Quartermain's gun at Elizabeth's house, which begs the question, who has access to the mansion and motive to frame Willow? Or better yet, who has time to care when the show appears to have forgotten this thread entirely? Also missing in action, Sunny and Ava's daughter. You'd think a child shared between two central characters might get a mention, or even a scene. But no, she's been conveniently erased, likely for plot expediency. And no one in town, apparently, has noticed or cares. Meanwhile, Portia, once assumed to be irrelevant in this particular circus, is now under suspicion for Drew's shooting. Except wasn't she with Isaiah that night? Details, details. As for Sidwell, the man continues to operate with all the subtlety of a villain in a pantomime. Shooting Dalton in cold blood. Yes, it was shocking. Yes, it was dramatic. And then scheming to pin Dalton's death on Laura with a car accident frame-up. Sadly for Sidwell, the coroner will likely notice that Dalton died from a gunshot wound, not vehicular impact. But why let forensics interfere with fantasy? In other absurdist developments, Emma and Rocco may soon be siblings, because Port Charles' history is as malleable as its moral compass. The writers, after all, have never let long-established facts get in the way of a juicy retcon. Monica Quartermain didn't have a sister for 4 decades, and now she does. So what's one more miracle blood relation? Let's also pause to appreciate the only truly uplifting change in recent memory. The revamped sets. Windermere is no longer shrouded in gothic gloom, and the Quartermain estate has finally had its long overdue facelift. One must applaud the set designers for doing what the writers refused to: provide clarity and consistency. And then there's Jason and Sunny, perpetually brooding eye candy, silently judging the chaos around them. Ultimately, unless the Drew storyline is mercifully euthanized soon, viewer attrition may rival the character body count. It's a shame, really. The residents of Port Charles are capable of greatness, or at least coherence. But until then, one can only watch in fascinated horror as lies multiply, plots contradict themselves, and corpses pile up, each one more bewildering than the last. General Hospital spoilers report Willow Tate is fresh off the cell block, but she's hardly ready to mingle. Before she was hauled off to jail, she was making amends with Drew Kane. While it looked like she might have been warming up to him here and there, she insisted to Elizabeth Baldwin that she was only coupling back up with Drew because she thought he was the fastest path to being back in her kids' lives. Now, Willow is convinced that Michael Corinthos tried to frame her, and she may not think she needs Drew's help anymore. If she ditches, certainly, he's never alone for long. Some fans are expecting that Nina Reeves would do anything to regain Willow's trust, which was broken the instant Willow found out about Nina's torrid affair with Drew. Still, other fans think Nina might drop to a new low and find herself drawn to Drew again. Sure, it sounds lower than low, but that's what we've come to expect out of Nina. Can you see her giving Drew another chance? She sure found it difficult to resist him before, despite not agreeing with his pursuit of her daughter. On the flip side, other fans are gossiping that Michael's chemistry with Jacinda Bracken may be short-lived. As much as we're loving every minute of this Pretty Woman-esque storyline, something tells us Jacinda's loyalty ultimately lies with herself. This won't bode well for Michael if Drew manages to get under her skin. That is his specialty, after all. Drew just has to figure out which buttons to press to make Jacinda come undone, and she could very well be led right back to his doorstep, whether she likes it or not. Could Drew pull off blackmailing Jacinda into a relationship with him just to help him take Michael down? We wouldn't put it past him. Speaking of blackmail being Drew's forte, we imagine he's been dying to get more dirt on Portia Robinson that would place her right back under his thumb. What are the odds that Drew might find out about Portia's affair with Isaiah Gannon? If he did, he wouldn't hesitate to use it against her to get her to do whatever he says. This time around, maybe he wants to stick it to Curtis Ashford by dating his pregnant wife. Could Drew strong-arm Portia into playing along if it means she gets to keep her affair a secret? And if so, how would she explain it to Isaiah? Keep checking back with us every day for more GH news and spoilers. General Hospital spoilers report. Trina Robinson has laid it all out for Jordan Ashford, making sure to let her know she would never let her father, Curtis Ashford, go back to Jordan again. But just how does she intend to see that promise through? And does she even have the power to make it work out that way? Curtis is already halfway down the wedding chapel aisle with Jordan again in his mind. He has known for years that the unfinished business between them was just waiting for the right moment to reignite and see this through. He's ready to figure out if his relationship with Jordan can work out after all. But will he pursue it at the expense of his daughter? Trina suspects that her mother may have actually tried to murder a sitting congressman. That's a pretty serious charge, and she's determined to make sure it doesn't break her parents' marriage apart. Poor Trina. Little does she know, these two never stood a change. Her mother has been lying since day one and just can't seem to help herself. Curtis can't trust Portia, and they've both already moved on with other people. Jordan is the least of Portia's worries right now when she is possibly pregnant by another man that no one even knows she's been sleeping with. Drew is the furthest thing from her mind right now. Kai's face dropped when Trina told him she wants to come clean with her parents. Telling them the truth about her presence at the crime scene on the night of Drew's shooting could send shockwaves through their family. Right off the bat, Kai didn't seem to agree with Trina's line of reasoning. She suspects that she might be able to bring her parents back together if she tethers them together with a problem as substantial as this. There's just one problem. Curtis and Portia have already moved way past Drew's drama. Trina thinks Drew is her parents' issue, but it's really their lack of trust for one another that did them in. Kai could try to sway Trina into taking a few steps back, and that could end with her spilling the beans to someone else instead. Right now, Trina is reeling after seeing Jordan and connecting all the wrong dots. She thinks Jordan came between her mom and dad, and she's not open to hearing any other version of the story. So, if Trina really wants to get her parents back together, she might start to think getting rid of Jordan is the smartest way to do that. Could she envision telling Jordan the truth about her sticky situation to get her to steer clear of Curtis and encourage him to stay the course with Portia? Would Jordan really keep this from Curtis if Trina asked such of her? And ultimately, would she be setting herself up for keeping yet another life-changing secret from Curtis that destroys his trust in her too? Stay tuned for more GH news and spoilers just ahead to see how this plays out. General Hospital spoilers for the week of November 24th reveal some twists and turns. Fans can expect Jen Sidwell to do something with Professor Henry Hank Dalton's body. That likely leads to Laura Collins being framed for murder. Plus, Harrison Chase continues his investigation. Keep reading, and let's talk about what is coming up in the ABC soap opera. Let's start off with Laura, who publicly threatened Dalton after Rocco Falconeri's criminal charges were upgraded. The mayor warned that he is framing Rocco, and he'll regret it. Then, Sonny Corinthos was warned to leave Dalton alone, as they had a plan already. Of course, it wasn't anyone in Rocco's corner who got rid of Dalton. That was Sidwell, right in front of Britt Westbourne. However, Sidwell will likely get rid of the body, so it can't be traced back to him. I wouldn't be surprised if Sidwell ordered his goons to throw Dalton's body in front of Laura's moving. Sonny Corinthos was warned not to do anything to Sidwell. However, with Laura's public threat and Rocco Falconeri's upcoming trial, the mayor could get blamed for Dalton's death. While the man was shot, the police might reason that maybe Sonny shot him while Laura ran him over with a car. As for Rocco, he might have to stay behind bars for a little bit. I could see Dalton's sudden murder complicating things for the young man. General Hospital spoilers for next week reveal that Chase is continuing his investigation. Right now, Chase is working to prove that Michael's alibi is fake. We know that a preview clip suggests Chase finds some evidence, as he says he can prove that Michael's alibi is fake. While Chase is working hard and Willow needs to keep her distance from Drew Kane, the nurse could end up getting even closer to her hero. Fans will also see Marco Rios freak out about Dalton's sudden death. Sidwell mentioned getting rid of him, but Marco probably thought it was just talk. So, how does he hide his guilt from Lucas Jones? At some point, Marco's morals will kick back in. Although he wants revenge for his mother's death, he's going down a very dark road. General Hospital spoilers reveal a preview clip has been released for Thursday, November 20th, 2025. It shows Harrison Chase continuing to investigate. Jacinda Breckel and Sonny Corinthos meet. Plus, Professor Henry Hank Dalton's death will cause ripple effects for multiple characters in Port Charles. Keep reading, and let's talk about what is coming up in the ABC soap opera. Let's start off with Nina Reeves. The woman shows up at the Brown Dog Bar. The blonde asks an unseen person why they asked to meet with her. Since that same day, Chase is furthering his investigation. I have to wonder if it's the detective. Will he quiz Nina about Jacinda? Speaking of Jacinda, she will be on a date with Michael Corintho. At the Metro Court, Sonny shows up. This gives Michael an opportunity to introduce Jacinda to Sonny. That is when the mob boss suggests they could get a double miracle tonight. General Hospital spoilers for the next episode reveal that the preview clip also features Britt Westbourne and Jen Sidwell. The villain shot Dalton unexpectedly right in front of Britt. The woman will demand to know why Sidwell did that. Of course, the villain will claim he got rid of their problem. I'm not quite sure if Britt was prepared for him to go that far, though. It could also be a reminder to Britt of who she is dealing with in case she wants to throw more demands and ultimatums his way. Fans will also see Laura Collins screaming. She is outside of her car and looking down at the ground. I wonder if Sidwell will have someone throw Dalton's body in front of Laura's car. Even though she won the election, it will appear she got rid of Dalton by running him over. At least, until someone notices the bullet hole in Dalton's chest. Still, with Laura publicly threatening Dalton, then with Rocco Falconeri's trial, this will get complicated. Over with Alexis Davis. She has a legal strategy to discuss with Willow Tate. There is also Ava Jerome, who has drinks with Marco Rios and Lucas Jones. There is also Lucas's confrontation with Carly Spencer. If she won't give her acceptance of Marco, then Lucas threatens to cut her out of his life, so stay tuned. Which storyline are you looking forward to seeing the most on Thursday, November 20th, 2025? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Be sure to check back with Celebrating the Soaps for all the latest General Hospital spoilers, news, rumors, comings and goings, and updates. General Hospital spoilers are in for Thursday, November 20th, 2025. Fans can expect Britt Westbourne to be horrified. Lucas Jones threatens Carly Spencer. Plus, Jacinda Breckel meets Sonny Corinthos. Keep reading, and let's talk about what is coming up in the ABC soap opera. 1. Britt faces a chilling wake-up call. Britt lashes out at Sidwell, but nothing prepares her for witnessing Dalton's sudden, deadly fate. A brutal reminder of the power she's up against. 2. Lucas warns Carly he'll cut ties. Lucas refuses to let Carly interfere as he moves into Windermere with Marco. When she won't back down, he threatens to shut her out of his life entirely. 3. Jacinda meets Sonny in a crucial moment. Michael introduces Jacinda to Sonny, sparking a conversation that could shift everything. While Willow pleads for help, let's start off with Britt, who ranted at Gen Z's Sidwell about Professor Henry Hank Dalton. While Sidwell agreed that they don't really need Dalton anymore, Britt wasn't expecting the man to get shot right there in front of her. Of course, Ava is probably referring to if Marco breaks Lucas's heart. If she only knew what Marco was hiding. General Hospital spoilers for tomorrow's episode reveal that Michael Corinthos makes an introduction. The young man introduces Jacinda to Sonny. The mob boss says, "Wouldn't it be nice to get 2 miracles in one night?" As for Willow Tate, she gets an update from Alexis Davis. The client says she will do anything. Meanwhile, Nina Reeves asks an unseen person why they wanted to see her. As for Harrison Chase, he continues his investigation. It is also teased that Laura Collins makes a shocking discovery. Is this about Dalton, or perhaps the election? The lady just found out she won, but with Dalton suddenly dead, things could get complicated for Laura, Rocco Falconeri, Sonny, and everyone in between. Which storyline are you looking forward to seeing the most on Thursday, November 20th, 2025? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Be sure to check back with Celebrating the Soaps for all the latest General Hospital spoilers, news, rumors, comings and goings, and updates. General Hospital spoilers for Nov 24/28, 2025. Suggest Michael Corinthos is wrecked. Laura Spencer is accused of possibly killing someone. And a couple of preemptions to tell you about. This is also the end of November, sweeps coming up. Plus, we've got Thanksgiving week. As we always do on Early Edition Day, we start with what's coming this week and then talk about what's ahead next week. On Wednesday, November 19th, we've got Jason Morgan asking Alexis Davis if she really thinks Danny Morgan and Charlotte Cassadine can save Rocco Falconeri. We've heard a little bit about this earlier in the week, but she and Rick Lansing plan to basically put Hank Dalton on trial for filing a false police report. Something infuriates Emma Scorpio Drake, and it may be how badly Dante Falconeri is treating Gio Palmieri. Remember how bad Dante was when Rocco and Danny were at that party, and then Rocco got drunk? That was in no way Gio's fault. He actually saved him. And now Dante is amping up. This is a situation where Gio needed some criticism, but Dante's not being a good dad. Meanwhile, Sidwell asks Britt what she wants him to do, and then tells her he's going to be her savior. He may deal with Dalton for her in a very dangerous way and save Rocco. I don't think Britt is going to feel bad if something happens to Dalton, and I think something is going to happen to him. Sonny Corinthos is asking someone if they can do this for him, and he may be talking to acting DA Justine. Maybe just listen to these kids and take a second look. Plus, Dalton never mentioned that the lab was trashed when he was talking to Laura and the police initially. It was just that he broke into the lab. You'd think if he trashed a lab, he would say he broke in and trashed the lab. That's not the kind of thing that you omit casually when you're accusing someone of big crimes. Thursday, November 20th, we've got Laura making a shocking discovery, and she might find Dalton's body. That'd be pretty clever. Sidwell could take out Dalton and then blame it on Laura. And in case she did get reelected, that might put an end to it. Nathan is standing at Laura's car window this week, talking to her. She's crying and looks distraught, so Nathan may be working a crime scene. Laura has to wait to make a statement and is horrified by what she sees. Sidwell tells somebody this week, "This is what happens when you betray me," and he may well be talking to Dalton. Sidwell told him to drop the whole thing with the robbery, and he wouldn't. He's clearly out of control. Laura threatened Dalton this week and struck him physically based in front of a room full of press at the polls. So, if Dalton turns up dead, Laura is going to be the top suspect because of this whole Rocco and Dalton scandal. It's getting very interesting. They're doing up the end of sweeps right. Sonny shows up at the Metro Court restaurant as Jacinda Bracken and Michael are out on a dinner date, and Michael introduces Jacinda to Sonny. We'll see if his dad gives Michael the thumbs up. I'm kind of thinking he may not. Harrison Chase makes big progress in his investigation, and it looks like he digs in the right spot to find out where Jacinda really was the night Drew was shot and who she was with, because that cracks Michael's alibi. Elsewhere, Britt is rattled. That may be because Sidwell casually kills Dalton, and maybe Britt worries that she might be on the chopping block at some point also. Marco Rios and Lucas Jones have dinner with Ava Jerome on Thursday, and I wonder if it's going to be at Windermere, and if Ava is going to keep getting closer to Sidwell. Friday, November 21st, we've got Gio having a heart-to-heart with Sonny. Gio's eaten up with guilt about not being around for his granddad Ned Quartermain more since he found out that was his granddad, and then him having this coronary. He feels bad that Rocco was arrested and is at risk for prison. There's just a whole lot going on, and I'm sure Gio is going to tell Sonny how furious Dante is with him. Fortunately, he's talking to the right person, because Sonny has been on the receiving end of Dante's hatred, like when he shot him in the chest right before he found out that was his son. So, Sonny's a good one for Gio to get advice from. Also, Jason has some questions for Britt, and it may be about her involvement with Dalton when the guy turns up dead, as I suspect he might. That's not confirmed yet, though. Marco makes a big decision, and I wonder if he's going to flip over and start doing dirty, illegal stuff with his dad Sidwell. Before, Marco has tried to stick to the right side of the law, but that may need changing. Alexis gets a huge update from Chase on Friday. He tells Alexis that he can prove Michael is lying about his alibi. I definitely think Chase found out Jacinda's real client, and it may in fact be Ezra Boyle, who may in fact have just been elected mayor. Michael is trying hard to keep the peace as the week shuts down. Next week, November 24th through the 28th on General Hospital, we have Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday with new episodes, but we expect preemptions on Thursday and Friday for Thanksgiving and the day after Thanksgiving, Black Friday, for sports coverage. Lots and lots of football, and boo to that. I'd rather see my soap. Tracy Quartermain's still out of town. I do expect her back soon because of Ned's health crisis. Valentine Cassadine is heading to a U.S. prison, and then he and Carly Corinthos Spencer can really scheme to wreck Jack Brennan. Jocelyn was close to Dalton just before he was killed. Will someone remember that she left the bar with him if that is how it goes, and then he turns up dead? Ned's heart crisis has the Q family stressed out and worried, and is going to shake up Thanksgiving this year. Alexis is thrilled that Chase can break Michael's alibi, so she needs to go over and talk to the DA. Alexis can also point the DA to Portia Robinson having a big motive and no alibi. Meanwhile, Willow Tate also had no alibi, but she really didn't have a motive, and the shooting victim says he doesn't think she did it. So, Alexis may get those pesky charges dropped soon. Michael and Jacinda get in deeper. Drew is ecstatic that Willow is out of Pentonville, but will she turn him down for spending the holidays together? And we expect major fallout from the election results. General Hospital spoilers suggest Curtis Ashford might be rethinking his approach to co-parenting with Portia Robinson. Stella Henry's heart-to-heart was a stepping stone for Curtis, signaling that his family is rallying for him to stay in his marriage and make it work. On the heels of hearing the same from his father, Marshall Ashford, Curtis was already starting to have doubts about the separation from his wife. Showing up at Portia's office on Monday and seeing the evidence of her ultrasound brought tears to his eyes, despite Portia reinforcing that they were parting ways and seemingly being fine with it. Of course she is. She knows that the baby on board may not be her husband's. Will her tune change if it turns out she is carrying Curtis's child? Something tells us her paternity test plans could be decimated if she is arrested soon on suspicion of trying to kill a sitting congressman. Will Alexis Davis upend Portia's prenatal strategy and drive Curtis back into Portia's handcuffed arms? Leave it to Curtis' auntie to insert herself right in the middle of a couple's divorce. She has been trying to stay out of the meddling lane for the last year and a half since Curtis' controversial marriage to Portia first began. But hearing that he has a baby on the way had her feeling bold. She was quick to tell him he had plenty of reason to work things out with his wife at this juncture. We expected Curtis to tell her just what he told Marshall, that there was no room for reconciliation now, but he didn't give her that speech. This has left Curtis with more questions than answers, as he always takes his auntie's advice into consideration. Portia was quick to stop Curtis in his tracks when he stopped by her office on Monday. He left with tears in his eyes, but not because she told him she wasn't willing to renegotiate their plans moving forward. Instead, he left with an ultrasound photo in hand of what he believes is his growing baby. It tore Portia up to let him believe that, knowing the baby may be Isaiah Gannon's. Still, the second Portia got the sense that Curtis might be willing to consider Stella's guidance, she balked and reminded him they were over. Does that mean Curtis is truly done with their marriage just because she is holding firm on it? Sonny Corinthos and Rick Lansing have both given Alexis substantial information that is ultimately going to point her over a very different target than her client, Willow Tate. Creating a scenario in which Portia shot Drew Kane won't be the hard part. Rather, Portia defending herself against such claims will be an uphill battle. Portia may be forced to reveal her alibi for that night was another man, the other potential father of her child. If she doesn't, it could push Curtis to stay married to her just to protect her. He might even lie for her and manufacture an alibi, if we know Curtis and how he intends to protect the mother of his child. As for Jordan Ashford, she may be out of luck if she thinks she just Curtis back. A potential prison sentence for a pregnant Portia is guaranteed to drive Curtis into protector mode.